This is Prompting Potential, where we step into the world of entrepreneurs, innovators inside and outside of organizations who ignite inspiration, fuel innovation, and unleash imagination against all odds. Prompting Potential spotlights incredible individuals and influential ideas at the intersection of leadership, technology, and transformation. I'm Roger Rohatke, the Chief AI Officer at Chai, and you can find us at heychai.ai. Welcome back to Prompting Potential. Today's episode features two exceptional leaders from SLB, a global energy technology company operating in some of the most technically demanding environments in the world. Pearl Chu helped shape SLB's global technical community, embedding performance, progression, and value creation into how engineers and scientists grow and contribute. Simon Ross leads global supply, ensuring operational excellence, resilience, and execution across a complex worldwide network. Together, they represent how a large industrial organization evolves, aligning people, culture, and advanced technology to deliver performance at scale. Today's conversation explores how SLB turns complexity into capability, how culture drives innovation, and where AI and digital tools fit into real-world industrial operations. So Pearl and Simon, welcome. It's great to have you both on our podcast. And you know what? Something I want to start with before we get into anything else. Just in conversations we've had, it's interesting because we've been talking, and it turns out both of you have lived in Paris, right? And so I love going to Paris when I can. And it's obviously different as a visitor or a tourist than living there. The food is amazing. I'm sure you've had the best food. We can kind of maybe get into some of that, but I'm dying to ask you this one question, right? So I'm sure you've heard of the cronut in New York, which is the Dominique Ansel combination of the croissant and donut. People are lined up down the block years ago to get in for it, and it's phenomenal. I love it. But one thing I've been dying to have is the crookie. Have you heard of the crookie?
No.
Well,
what is it?
Yeah. So apparently, I think you speak French, right?
Yes.
So Stéphane Louvard, as I say it right?
Yes, pretty good.
He created this combination of a cookie and a croissant combined, and they melt a warm cookie dough like ball into the center of this croissant. And I guess people in Paris are going nuts for it, apparently, and something I gotta have.
What do you think about that?
I don't see the Parisians eating that, actually.
I'm the same.
Yeah.
And just in general, exotic food or combined food.
Combined foods.
You know, like
do you mutate them?
like a turducken. Have you heard of a
Yes.
turducken?
Oh yeah. Oh, of course.
I just disagree with it.
Yeah.
There's a fundamental problem with it.
Yeah.
A good croissant, a good donut.
Yeah. There's something awesome about the turducken, though. I gotta tell you. As a matter of fact,
I'm not in that camp.
Yeah.
We're filming here in Houston. We got the rodeo going on. There's all sorts of kind of fun food at the fair, right? And so you can get a turducken on a stick, probably.
Yeah, you could.
fried turducken on a stick. I don't know if they also have turducken on a stick along with a crookie, but, fried crookie. But I'm sure you can get
really
that.
Complicated.
But I'm telling you, it's probably so good. Joking aside, you both have had this incredible past and the story for each of your journeys to where you are today. I want to get into some of that and then talk about what you're doing in your roles. And so before we get started, one of the things I want to just say is, Pearl, congratulations on the recognition that you just received, right? For the Heart Energy Influential Women of the Year for 2026 in energy, right?
Yes.
Awesome.
Thank you so
congrats.
much. I'm super excited about it. Thanks so much.
Yeah, well deserved. And there's a story they wrote about you. And Are you going to be talking more about this out there publicly? I know you speak publicly.
So there is a profile that Heart Energy published for the 25 women who were recognized this year. It's the 9th year that they're doing it. It's really a great event as they're supporting the empowerment of women and gender equity in the industry.
Right.
So I might speak about it a little bit more, but it's really come out now, and the profile's out there if you want to look online.
Yeah, absolutely. So, maybe we'll include the link in the in the information below. But I tell you, it's very exciting that, to see the recognition for that. I'm excited that we are again speaking at the Women in Tech event for the Greater Houston Chamber of Commerce here in Houston.
Yes.
That you have led and put that together. And I'm thinking maybe we start here with you and your story, and then we'll jump, Simon, to your story, and then we'll just kind of start talking about our journey together. And I've got some questions here on this iPad that we can kind of dive into. But yeah, let's talk about that because, that's where we met. But before all that, there's a whole journey that you've been on to even get there.
Well, thanks. I'm so excited to be here, Roger. It's really an honor to be able to speak to both of you. And so I've been with SLB for 35 years. The only company that I work for. I started off as a mechanical engineer, the first, decade working in engineering, developing technologies. And I had the opportunity to move into different roles, different countries, a lot of work around human resources, was able to lead the technology HR director role, which has been so eye-opening for me. And this kind of has led these experiences to be, I see it as a lucky fusion of all my experiences to end up in my current role, which is the director of our technical domains and university relations, where I'm leading the strategic development for our technical community, our technical profiles, our engineers and scientists at SLB, which is a super important group of people that are driving innovation for our technologies and services.
So I want to come back in just a minute and talk a little bit more about your philosophy. We'll get into some things around that. But Simon, it's great to also be talking with you, and want to hear a little bit more about your journey too, because some of the conversations we've had around your time, not just in Paris, but in London and growing up there, and then being here in Houston 3 times, right? 3 times you've been here, which is right. Really cool. So you've experienced rodeo food multiple times, it sounds like, and concerts and whatnot. I guess, if you look at your story and the path that you have, where you're leading global supply, and you're having to do this in a complex operational environment, how has that really shaped your leadership and also your approach? And I guess maybe take us through like how you even got to that role, and then how you're thinking about how it shaped it.
All right. Well, it's nice to be here as well. Thank you. And it's always lovely hanging out with you, Pearl. It's actually, my story is not completely dissimilar to Pearl's. I left university. I'm from Scotland. I left university, and Schlumberger at the time was the first company that I worked for. Well, apart from a few months where I was working in a bar in Threadneedle Street in London, job hunting. And that's the company that I've been with up until now. There's been about 3 parts to my career. The first part was very field focused, so our field operations, so rig based. So I worked offshore in the North Sea, West Africa, Norway. And I also did a role in technical support. So that was a global support role. We're involved with standards and audits and training. I loved that part of my career. That was the formative parts of my career. Then I moved to a consulting group that we had at the time. We don't have them anymore. Management consulting, SBC, somebody, and that was a very, very big career change. It was completely out of operations. It was strategic. It was leading transformations for our company and the other companies that we worked for. It's where you learn how to think, where you learn how to be more logical, and it was a very tough job as well. What happened after that is what happens to many consultants, is that you get pulled from someone that you're working for to go and work for them. And that's what happened to me, but it was still within Schlumberger. So I was leading a transformation program to develop our new MRO, maintenance repair operations organization, which is called something else. And I got pulled to run that function within a part of our company afterwards. So this is now the 3rd part of my career. And from there, I went on to various operational leadership roles in the various facets of operations. So MRO, supply chain, general management, and now, 25 plus years later, I'm looking after global supply, which is supply chain, manufacturing, and MRO for the company. I feel very privileged. I feel very lucky. It's not everywhere where you can experience all those different types of opportunities and different things and really evolve to the kind of role that you wish to have, right? It's about really inspiring the people that you work with and work for. And what I've found over the years is that having a core group of people around you, maybe not in the same place as you, but that you work very, very closely with, who are very diverse in terms of thinking, very different in terms of capabilities, where you grow ideas, where you incubate ideas, and where ideas are then led to wherever they're going to be implemented, is one very, very important thing. So that diversity of thought is very, very important for me, and it's a very important part of our company. The second part is really around how you go about, something big, at scale. In our company, we have an experiment, learn and grow philosophy, right? It's not entirely unusual, but having lived it, I really believe in it. So you have to ideate, you have to experiment, you have to pilot, you have to analyze and adjust, and then you grow at scale. And you have to treat every one of those steps very carefully. And you have to be careful to course correct whenever you need to course correct, right? The last one, which I feel is very important, especially in like many of us, when you're in corporate companies with quarterly expectations and so on, is you have to take a long-term approach. It's very, very difficult to make big changes on a 3-month basis. We have obligations on a quarterly basis, of course we do. But when you're trying to do something big, you have to take a long-term approach. So all of that said, I think that if you kind of generally follow those rules, you've got good chances of success.
Yeah, and that's really interesting, because I think I've talked to both of you around some of that, what has shaped you, some of the philosophies you have, and that's I think it's a really good framework actually for anybody who's starting out or even leading now to take. So and that same kind of conversation kind of spilled over to some of the philosophy that you have, Pearl, around how you think about and building high performing technical communities as well. And so talk to us a little bit about that and kind of your views on and your philosophy.
Yeah, listening to Simon, I have similar kind of approach based on our experiences. I think the fact that we lived in different countries have really opened our mindset associated with this diversity thought, which resonates a lot with me. What I like about the role in approaching this building strong technical teams or communities or individuals is that I lived as an engineer. I lived and worked as a manager, managing technical people, and then looking at the HR approach and strategic development of technical people in different countries, in Paris, in Beijing, in Kuala Lumpur. Those things really changed how I thought of diversity and what it brings to the teams. And so, to add on top of what Simon was saying, I think culture is so important. Culture is so important. And in our programs that I'm governing to develop and grow our technical people, culture is a huge theme. Yeah. Designing into the systems, saying we want people who are open to challenge the status quo, who feel comfortable saying, I disagree with that, or have dialogue about that, to really maximize the solutions that are out there. I really believe diversity of thought, diversity of background, diversity of education, of culture can improve 1 + 1 + 1 = 10 at the end for the teamwork that you have.
Yeah, and I see a similar theme between, kind of both of the things that you said around, and especially like leaning back on that diversity of thought, right? And that culture that drives, creativity and innovation. SLB is clearly known in the world as being very innovative. And, especially from our conversations, I've seen that even deeper. I guess, just from both of you, just a perspective, and maybe we'll start with you, Simon, like on how do you think about in your company driving innovation without like mandating it from the top? Building a culture of innovation, if it's already there or not there. And it might be already in SLB, but if a company doesn't have that kind of culture, how do you really foster that?
You've got to inspire the population that you're innovating with, right? So in our case, for example, there's been a significant focus on training. Always. So continuous improvement is very, very important. Very recently, we've been rolling out AI training for our entire population. And it's very, very foundational, and it's getting a lot of very, very positive press. We have to prepare our organization for what is here and what is coming. And it's by arming ourselves with this kind of knowledge that helps you think more broadly, where you think of the problems and the solutions in the same kind of way, right? So that's one very, very important part. Fostering it also involves sponsorship. So if you want ideas to incubate and to flow somewhere where they can actually be cooked into something which is more industrialized, that takes work, that takes governance, that takes time with people. So a lot of recognition. We have a lot of forums. Pearl is in many of them as well, where you bring these contributors that are making that difference to the top, to the forefront, and recognize them, and so that you can then use those ideas in different kind of ways. But all of that being said, there is the opposite side of things, right? We can't be naive here. A lot of the big innovations do come from the company, and you want them to be nurtured and implemented in other parts of the organization. And that's where one of the most important things is that where the changes are significant, you've got to make sure that what we're trying to implement works, right? So I go back to the whole pilot experiment and whatever kind of phase, but you need to remove those excuses. People need to believe in them. People need to trust what we're trying to do. And we're an integrity first company, right? So things need to work. And when people have trust in what you're trying to do, and those roadblocks are not there anymore when they're removed, then you can get on with the fun stuff and grow them in a more progressively. So you've got to look at it from both sides. You've got to inspire, you've got to promote, but you also have to have solutions that work.
Yeah. Yeah.
I want to add on top of that because I usually agree with most what Simon says. I'm just going to add on top of that. Related to my job, I govern the program where we're recognizing and give a framework for progression, career progression for our technical profiles. And in that, on top of all those things that Simon said, which is great, we have a system design. I think there has to be a system design that is driving this cultural reaction and understanding of the individuals. So in the design of our system, we're asking employees to articulate what innovative ideas and what value has that brought to the company. And then we want to recognize them for that, right? And so a part of that is having this trust is the system driving those behaviors, the system recognizing them, what's in it for the individual. They might get a recognition, they might get a promotion, they might get a salary increase, but it's not just what's in it for them. What's in it for the company? You have to be bringing business value. And if you're not bringing business value, you're not going to get recognized. So that win-win for the individual and the team and the company has to be super clear, and that we aren't going to give you something just because you tried really hard. It needs to come back and give some ROI to the organization. So
that's really good.
System design, I think, is so important.
Yeah, it's really key. And I think it reminds me of something I think you might have said also in one of our conversations around, a culture should move from being a culture of individual heroics to a system of repeatable excellence, right? And I think you've talked about that.
Big time a company of heroes for the longest time.
Yeah, field engineer.
And
the field engineer was the hero.
Yeah, and I think we've progressed. We still have some of that.
There is still a lot of that.
Yeah,
there is definitely that.
Yeah, but we've been working hard for many years.
It's not necessarily a bad thing, though.
No.
I think it's a good thing actually. It's just that it has its limitations because you can't depend on heroes all the time.
Yeah,
you need to have a system that works.
That, the team effort on top of that to get even more out of your individual contributors, right?
But it comes from that offshore approach, going out and freeing a stuck rig, or these end-to-end operations that last for days and days, and those kinds of things. And
you're alone out there often.
And at least very isolated, and that's where it came from. But that was in a different time, and now we have more systems, more integration, more opportunities to be more systematic about how we work, right?
Right. Yeah, and there's a huge shift along now. I mean, even now with the technology that underscores all of this, right? So especially with AI and things like that. So maybe just kind of transitioning a bit into some of the tech things around all of that, and that system that or that culture of innovation or that culture as an engine for performance, and look at like what's under the hood now with technology, right? And when you think about it, there's so much noise, as we all know, around AI, and obviously we're hard at work building AI agents, trying to solve really complex challenges with the future of what agentic AI looks like. And there's still companies that are struggling to even get to past just the culture accepting AI in general, right? There's a resistance there. There's a confusion. There may be a misunderstanding, or they just haven't been empowered fully yet. The tools aren't in their hands, or what have you. Their data is still a little bit messy. Things are still a bit siloed. There's legacy systems, and really they never completed their digital transformation in a lot of these companies. And so there's so many hurdles to get over to be able to implement and bring AI to the forefront. But when you think about the complexity of what's going on, even in a company like SLB, right? And especially in that industrial environment, you got to think about where AI really brings value and how it can enable that to be a culture that, depends on that to bring that value at a greater scale. I would love to hear from both of you, like on how you view that and where you see AI, bringing value in SLB.
So obviously this is the topic at the moment, right? There's been, as you said, a lot of progression, a lot of discussion around chatbots. We have created our own pretty amazing, I have to say, internal chatbot capability that looks within our own information set as well. I'm pretty proud of what the team have managed to do. The thing about any chatbot, though, is that it has limitations because it's an off-process type of thing, right? You're asking a question, you're getting input, it's helping the individual user become more productive, but then something has to happen, right? That's not where the ultimate big value is. The big value is when you start integrating processes together, when you start automating processes within processes, and you have to look at something big. You have to look at those big opportunities where it's really worth spending the time, spending the effort, and getting, again, as Pearl was saying, that ROI. There's a lot of easy opportunity or easier opportunity around transactional efficiency, where you stitch things together. That's not, to me, the best application of big AI focuses. So for us, there are two or three things that really come to mind that I would maybe highlight briefly. The first one is, as I said, we're an integrity-first company. It's a very high-risk environment. It's highly complex. We've got a big portfolio. We work all over the world. It's high temperature, high pressure. We deal with radiation, with explosives, it's a tremendously complicated working environment. So it's integrity first. So one of the things and failure is generally speaking not too much of an option, right? So there's been a lot of really exciting work around preventing failures, around predicting failures, around understanding why things fail, and having models in place that determine how to avoid them from failing. And that's largely statistical, evolved from bivariate and trivariate types of models to something which is far more predictive now in nature, and they're very, very powerful. I think how I used to be as an engineer, where things just failed. The light went from green to red. Now we have all sorts of information in front of us to help us prevent those kinds of things. So that's one which is the core of what we do in our organization. The second one, completely different, is for me is around procurement. Once again, we have a very large supply base. We have a lot of different transactions. It's what's needed when you have such a vast portfolio working in such a geographically diverse way. But not all of our 30,000 odd suppliers can be managed as well as we would like, or we can't collaborate with them as much as we would like. how do we know that we're buying things at the best price? How do we know that we're involving the right suppliers with a sourcing activity? How do we know that a sourcing activity should even start? It's a complicated thing which gets more and more complicated with the bigger your supply base becomes. So there's a wonderful opportunity here within procurement, looking at how you manage tail spend, how you manage negotiations, how you manage sourcing and automate sourcing to really bring incremental value there, which is very, very exciting for us. And we're in a great place for that with the investment that we've made in our ERP platform to work with various agile suppliers to really level that whole thing up. So that's another one. And we've got room for one more?
Yeah.
Okay. So the last one is really at the high end, I would say. Volatile environment, right? It's activity changes very, very quickly for one reason or another. It could be geopolitical, it could be weather, it could be who knows what. And that plays havoc when you have a resource base which is mobile in nature. How much inventory do you have in your locations and your manufacturing centers and your distribution centers? How do you manage all of that? One thing changes and the resources that were originally there now need to be over here. And that takes a lot of hand-holding. You have to adjust inventory levels. It's a tremendously complex process. So as we go forward, we're going to see more and more of that become automated, where changes in demand signal result in automated changes or recommendations and how your fleet and how your inventory should evolve as well. So 3, I would say, big things to me on how your own operating efficiency can become more integrity based, or have more integrity, and overall become more resilient.
Yeah, yeah. And I think there's in all that, there's this consistent theme that goes across all of it is the human in the loop, right? And the people that are part of all this and the nature of that. And I want to come back to you on a couple things, but because I think what you kind of painted as a picture, a lot of companies would benefit from, and it's really cool the way you laid that out. And also, when you think about people, there's these engineers, right, that have all this expertise, and a lot of times, some of the things that you and I have talked about here is like, how do you ensure that this, technology and AI really kind of enhances the engineer's capabilities, right, instead of replacing maybe judgment and things like that.
It's so interesting when I listen to Simon. His role is really complex. It's really like big chunks of operations going on. I often look at the people side of what's going on in terms of development, and it's true. I have the opportunity to talk to some of our top technical experts in this technical community, and I was talking to them about this. And AI, for sure, as we're trying to build trust in the system and making sure that the outcome and the output has high integrity, we will see that it'll phase in. And we've already been doing it the past 5 to 10 years, as we're automating more and more operational things. What was interesting in terms of the people side is that AI, the approach that I've heard is it's a part of the team, let's say. It should not be replacing judgment and critical decision making. It might start doing it for simpler things. And so more junior roles might have things easier, but the culture is you can't just treat it as a black box and trust the answer. Right. This human in the loop is super important, and we're driving that across all of our operations and culture. And what's interesting for the next step, though, as AI starts doing that more and more, because we're still quite early in the journey, is how do you develop those critical thinking skills that our young folks are doing, that AI will start to replace that?
Yeah.
Yes?
Right.
So, and then as the AI opportunities and the outputs grow, how are you going to make sure that pyramid of skills and competencies that you usually get that are going to be replaced by some of these AI decisions, let's say on the simpler things, our senior employees actually are in better shape because they've experienced all of those things already. I had a very interesting review. I'm a part of the review for our Schlumberger Foundation Faculty for the Future. And this is a totally off-topic thing, but I was thinking about this. One of the women who we were evaluating, we give fellowships for women from developing countries to do their PhDs and research. And this woman was doing research on AI training so younger kids could understand the philosophy and approach of AI. So you don't see it as black box. Right. You see how it's working. Right. So if our employees can understand why AI is coming out, there's something called like XAI, I can't remember, something about transparency of understanding why the answer is coming from AI so humans can then judge whether it makes sense or not type thing. Yeah.
No, that's really good. Yeah. I mean, I think there's going to come a time when, we are all having to face how much do we outsource our decision, how many decisions do we outsource to AI versus which decisions we reserve and the tasks we reserve that need to be done by humans. And I think the way you're approaching that and the way you're looking at that, especially from that standpoint, is brilliant. And I think that's exactly how, so many of us are really, as companies out there, really need to be thinking.
Yeah.
Right?
And as individuals, you have to understand that too. It's exactly. Really, we're in the learning stages of what can AI do for me and what do I trust and what do I not trust.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And what do you need? I mean, sometimes you don't need AI to do something, certain things. I mean, I think that goes back to something that, Simon, you mentioned too, is around not all workflows are AI-able, right? I think is what the phrase that you used. And so, I was thinking about, and I've spoken on this before a little bit, but this whole scenario, if I go back to the procurement, side of things for a minute, and it may not exactly happen this way, but I kind of imagine this world, right, where today, a company, submits their bids, right? Somebody reviews those bids, and then, the process kind of kicks off from there. But, there could be a scenario where there's a workflow coming where, the bids come in, perhaps AI has been tasked to review those bids, checks between all the different parameters, the right supplier details, the right costing and so forth. And then it chooses the right bid that it thinks. Then it triggers the purchase order and makes all that arrangement, takes that transaction, and then it goes on to trigger the next thing, which is the shipment of the goods, right? So they are shipped from across the world, over the ocean, whatever. It tracks it, and then it manages the delivery of it all the way into field, into the job site, and into the work, right? So that whole entire workflow, could be something that AI could do.
What you essentially described there was something that went all the way from source to deliver.
Yeah.
Right. So it's a very, very long workflow actually. And if you break that down into chunks, then I can see that being a reality.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that it can't be a reality. Of course it can. Anything is AI-able. Let's be clear about that. But, I would say that there are going to be points that at least that I see where you're going to need to have that confirmation where this is the right thing to do. Yeah. But it depends on the complexity of what you're dealing with, right? If you're talking about buying rope, soap and dope or gloves or, something which is very generic, off the shelf and whatnot, catalogued, then why not, right? And I can absolutely see that. Now, you wouldn't go through the whole process with sourcing because it's catalogued. So, that first part has already been done for you. So you're really just thinking about that end part, right? Definitely. If you're talking about something which is far more complex, that requires engineering input, which is not repeat purchase, where there's no history of how much it cost before, you're starting to get to something where even with the best should cost tools and things like that, you're going to have people involved. You're going to have SMEs involved at some point, right?
Yeah.
So it really does depend on the complexity of process. But the key in all of it is for people to be driving the evolution and not to feel at risk or held back by it. And so going back to that people element, that's why we're spending a lot of time, a lot of focus on upskilling our general population. There's we've got fantastic data scientists who can build anything you want, right? But where do the ideas come from? They come from problems. Where do the problems come from? They come from the people that are running the operation, whatever that operation is today.
Right.
And then you have to bridge the operation problem to any of the solutions that get put in place. And how is that going to happen? You need to have these people in the middle, these people that are able to translate the problem and the solution, potential solutions, to the folk, the wizards is often a term that I've been accustomed to hearing and using, that can develop the magic, right? Yeah. So this ecosystem of where you can create these fusion organizations is how you will avoid these kinds of feelings of limitation, and how the organization will self-propel. Right. So
this is the power of the diversity story in a different lens. It's what you know and what you're seeing it from. This is where we have to move away from the heroics. Yes. Not one person can know all those things and be the translator as well. So I love that story because it's a different way to look at diversity. I'm always looking at diversity of people who are looking at a technical problem and how they have different views and debating or discussing and being comfortable to say, I don't agree with you. Let me think about this way because I grew up in China and I have a different way of looking at problems and I'm, a different background, whatever. So
exactly. One of the simplest and most impactful things that we do is pluck someone. I don't say pluck. We move someone to a different opportunity that's been living the problems and all sorts of angles in a manufacturing center or in an operations site, field location, into a place where they have empowerment, leadership, maybe a bit of budget to solve these problems. Connect them with the right people, and where they have the right kind of capabilities to think. With all of that, magic tends to happen, quite honestly speaking. You know, they know exactly the problems. They're armed with the opportunities to create solutions, and it's a really, really exciting thing to see.
Honestly, SLB is a leader in doing stuff like this. When he talks about that, it's like that's just the norm for us. Right. But it was driven by strategic HR principles and approaches from decades and decades ago. I'm so impressed with that part of our organization. I can't say enough about it. I mean, we were plucked, right? We've been plucked and placed in different things, and it forced us to learn something new.
I love that, and I think it's great. I think it goes back to the whole concept that we're talking about around culture, right? And the culture of maybe digital fluency, the culture of innovation, the culture of that brings in diverse thought and all these things. So that's certainly a differentiator for a company such as SLB for sure. And I think there's a part of this when you think about that. That the bigger picture that we kind of painted together there around, how AI could enable a myriad of things along this workflow of the supply chain or the procurement process or what have you. It can be a little bit daunting, right? And there's companies that just don't know where to start and they don't know how to start. So it's been said like, hey, maybe it's really good to probably start with a POC, start with a pilot, which is good. But we know that these pilots could also kind of fizzle out and die. And there's this side of things where if there's a death by pilot, how do you avoid that and then find the big opportunity areas that that you can prioritize one over the other, right? So I guess the question is like how does a company really start? Where do they start, knowing that a pilot could fizzle out? And how does that get fostered in this environment that you're talking about, for this innovation that's in SLB?
Yeah, so we pilot to de-risk. Right? So the first thing is to have a view on what your priorities are, and that comes from understanding your workflows, from where your major workflow opportunities might be, and then simulating a few opportunities from that. So that's number one, right? Here are the 5 things that we wish to do. Of those 5 things, maybe 2 of them are fairly simple and there's an out-of-the-box solution that you can implement. I'm just being very generic here. And maybe the others are uncooked and they're more bespoke and where there might be solutions that you need to be tailored to your own operation or where you need to build them internally, right? So that's the kind of obviously the range of deployments that you could be looking at. If you have decided to pilot, you've got to have a plan, right? And you pilot to learn again. You don't pilot to pilot. There are things that you want to get out of it to help you understand how you're going to grow more broadly.
To the next
right?
step.
That's the whole point.
Yeah.
So, in our case with, moving away from the AI topic just briefly, a lot of the downhole technologies that we build, they're tremendously complicated pieces of kit that we want to make sure work. Again, it's that integrity first aspect. So they go through a series of field tests in ever increasing environments to make sure that we understand that they're going to acquire what they're going to acquire. They're going to do as the way that they were intended, and over that trial, you modify them. And sometimes we course correct completely. That's the point. So you have to manage a pilot is the point I'm making. You don't just let it take its course. Yeah. And that can include running the course that you want and growing to that next level and growing at scale, or it can include stopping completely because it didn't achieve what you wanted to achieve.
Yeah. No, that's really good. And I think like in that, it again goes back to the right culture that you have in the company for these to be fostered. And I think you mentioned at the beginning around there needs to be that sponsorship, there needs to be that cultivation, there needs to be support from the top, and then all throughout the organization, groups working together, not in silos and so forth. And so I think some of the things that you both have seen in your journey, especially working and living around the world. And in a company like SLB, there's this tremendous camaraderie, collaboration that you find probably along these global hubs that you have. From engineering to supply chain, and I guess from centers in India all the way to manufacturing and sourcing teams across Asia and so forth, right? And I guess when you think about that. It goes back to the point around diversity, right? And maybe just a quick question on that around, what really you think stands out when you see the performance that's being delivered across these diverse regions to be able to enable a pilot to get off the ground and be successful, or even these larger projects.
Let me just talk a little bit about culture and the experiences I've had with different teams in those different countries. And one of the kind of grounding principles is our values at SLB, people, technology, and performance. We see that everywhere. And then when you go to certain locations, there is a culture, I would say, flavor that's a part of that SLB global flavor that's local. And the local leadership is so important in driving that, maintaining that, but still appreciating what the local culture has and what it drives. So I felt that heavily in Beijing, also in Paris. And now today, when I speak to different people in different countries, it's crazy how the different cultures interpret the big global messages. So this drive to be very vocal from the top down that we value diversity and we push diversity and we want that diversity of thought to be driving the optimization of any solution, whether it's be an innovative idea or continuous improvement on different technologies. I heard this once because we have individuals that are filled with bias based on how we grew up. One little thing that I love to say is we want our teams to be saying, normally it's very easy to say, Roger, Simon, that is a great idea. I was thinking the exact same thing. Let's celebrate, praise, recognize, because I agree with you. Versus to celebrate, praise, and recognize someone saying, I would have never thought of that.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
is a symbol.
Yeah.
It's a signal that we really
Yeah.
value
It's a less safe thing to
to
say.
say.
Right.
Yeah, I would have never thought of that.
Yeah.
So I think we drive that from the top down,
Yeah.
but we encourage it so visibly
Yeah.
that we want the bottom up drive as well from the individuals.
And it's not an easy thing to achieve. I mean, this aspect that Pearl's landing on there on psychological safety is something that we've been putting a lot of emphasis on.
Yeah.
It definitely wasn't always there,
No.
and it's a very, very important part of how you grow the right culture in an organization. You want people to speak up and to be able to speak up without feeling at risk. So I think that's one very, very important part. I saw that in a very, very vivid way in a few years ago. The situation was very different. It was one of our operating countries. We'd had a number of challenges there, including very sadly a fatality. And myself and some of my colleagues went there to understand what was going on and to spend time with the population. And we ran a workshop. And the workshop was really around getting into it, making them feel comfortable, really, really spending some, straightforward time with them all in their place of work. And there was around 20 people there. Half of them were ladies and half of them were men. And the topic of psychological safety comes up quite a bit. And it's clear that not everybody has that feeling, right? It's still something that's evolving.
Yeah.
But then this one lady spoke up. I'll never forget her. And she was relatively young in the company, just a couple of years, but she was running what we call coiled tubing crews. These are massive, massive setups. I mean, huge. With crews of 12 people for each of these big rigs and so on. And this young lady was in charge of these things, right? It's amazing, when you think about it, right? Multi-million-dollar assets, working in harsh environments with big crews. 2 years in the company. And what she said to me, I'll never forget it. She said, because we were asking, what do you do if you think the situation is unsafe? And she said, if I see something as being unsafe, I'll ask my operators if it's safe, and they'll say, yeah, it's safe. And then she'll say, well, can I do it then? Knowing that she thinks it's unsafe. And of course they say, well, no, I don't want you to do it. And then she'll say, well, maybe we can find another way of doing it then.
Where I can do it.
Yeah.
Where I can do it.
Where I can do it, where I can do it, where she can do it.
Yeah.
And that is so smart. It's so psychologically safe, and it completely course corrects, right? Now, if you take that emphasis and you take that general idea to any of the things that we're doing, implementing artificial intelligence, improving our technology, deciding on how to manage a crisis, whatever it might be, you have an organization which listens and pivots and adjusts to what's going around you, right?
Yeah, that's interesting. When you think about that and, how impactful that kind of story is, and when you look at companies outside of SLB today, and how they can benefit from that kind of view, just maybe as we wrap up here, just thought about how leaders could prepare for the future and how they should be thinking and how people in their organization should be thinking around the next, 5 to 10 years. It's hard to predict where AI will be, what a company might need to be successful in that environment, or especially in this technology explosion of things that might change the future of how humans and people get things done. I think if we just bring it back down to now, this moment, and and that story was really powerful because maybe there are some leaders out there that are wondering, what do I need to do now to prepare for this, and to prepare our company for that. So I'd love to hear just your thoughts on, maybe where things might be going and how do you prepare to get there, So.
Yeah, I think the topic of AI is huge. I think it's going to be a hugely disruptive, and it'll be going on for some time in terms of conversation. So this journey of AI has to be in the forefront. And I think we had talked once about how do you see like signals that the direction is going in the right way. And I think leaders have to be listening heavily to whether people, when they're talking, because there's so much change. I think the change is going to continue to be very dynamic. It's going to be big. It's going to be uncomfortable. And seeing how, I use the word culture all the time, seeing how people are speaking about that change, I think is a great signal on if the organization is taking up that change. I was trying to look up the difference between cynicism and skepticism, but what I like to think about is I find myself even saying, oh man, we can't do that because, and if you find yourself talking about trying to go back in the past, that's a big signal.
Yeah.
Versus thinking future state.
Yeah.
Because both are change, but one is change going back to something that you're comfortable, and one is change is how can I create a new future state that is building on all of these changes that we're doing. So this comfort of thinking forward, whereas if people are thinking backwards, that's a worry. That's a worry.
Yeah, that's really good.
And that's hard.
That's super hard.
We all think backwards.
Yeah.
You were there. So
it's more comfortable.
Yeah. So I obviously echoing Pearl's comments again. The foundation, if we're talking specifically around AI, Roger, is the training of the people, as we've talked about a little bit. You need to prepare your organization for any role they're going to play in it. Providing the input, implementing, end user, whatever it might be. But you've got to raise the bar on the understanding of the organization. I think that's fundamental. I'd add that you want to have a good view of what you want to do, and not just go to the simple, shiny stuff that might look good on the tin, but doesn't actually bring any value. Going back to Pearl's comments earlier about ROI and so on, you have to be very, very mindful about it and not just play around with it, right? Because it's investment. People are busy. We're all busy. Do things that really, really matter.
Yeah.
And then the other one, we've not talked much about this, but you've got to focus on your data, and it's a complicated topic.
Yeah.
The adequacy of your master data, the adequacy of the transactional data that's passing through it, the adequacy of how you're nourishing information and data with labeling and whatnot. All of these things are such important considerations.
So important foundations, yeah.
But done surgically against the workflows that you wish to transform.
Yeah.
Right? Because if you try and focus on the organization as a whole, you'll be there forever, right?
Yeah.
So these are a few things. Focus on the people and the technology and the processes that you need to be thinking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All levels.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
System view.
Yeah, there you go.
Important.
And bringing it all back to that culture that you foster, right?
Yeah.
I think that's great. And those are really good words of advice. Okay, so lightning round. We're just at almost at time here. So just a few quick questions. And I might throw you off a little bit here. Just random. Do you both drink soda or have you
Yes.
Soda,
Yes.
soda like just yeah.
Coke.
So
Coke Zero for me.
Coke Zero.
Yeah.
Favorite soda? Okay.
Probably a Diet Coke.
All
Coke
right.
Zero is
I don't know.
way
I don't
better
drink
than
a lot
Diet
of
Coke.
soda.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I'll tell you.
I like a Diet Coke every now and then.
Okay.
Okay, Diet Coke. I'll tell you why. Because you mentioned Scotland. I mean, my favorite is Iron Brew.
You said Iron Brew.
Iron Brew, yeah.
Wow.
Now it's
had
bad
Iron
for my
Brew?
teeth, right? It's really bad. Have you ever had Iron Brew?
No, I've
oh
never
my gosh,
heard of
it's
it.
like
part
literally
of Scotland's culture.
Okay.
it's the
I should
best.
try.
It's the best soda.
I'll bring you one
Okay,
back.
good.
Yeah. I
It's
feel
intense.
bad for not saying Iron Brew now.
Yeah.
I was waiting
Waiting
for it.
for it, Diet
It's second best,
Coke.
right? Do they have a
Diet
Diet
Coke.
Iron Brew? I don't think it would be
do,
this.
but
They do.
It tastes vile. I wouldn't recommend that.
Yeah, exactly,
Yeah, I
exactly.
wouldn't.
Okay, so last lightning questions. Really quickly, one guiding mantra that shapes your approach to innovation.
Dialogue over debate.
Okay.
Dialogue.
Stay curious.
Okay.
Learn, adapt.
Love it, love it. All right. A risk you glad you took in your career.
Move in Paris.
Okay.
Well, I'm not going to say the same thing.
Yeah, I'm moving to Paris.
No. I mean, it's not that much of a risk. It is a risk.
It was for me.
It was a risk.
Yeah.
It was a risk. It was a risk.
Yeah, and you met your husband there.
I met my husband there. Yeah.
I think changing to management consulting was a big one.
Okay, so a book, a mentor, or idea that influenced you, how you lead innovation.
My favorite book that I recommend is How Women Rise, habit number 4, which is building versus leveraging relationships. How to really leverage relationships, I think, can really drive innovation and just impact and performance overall.
Okay. I love that. That's awesome. And for yourself?
If there's one book, if I'm going to land on a book, it would be The Goal by Goldratt. It's all about removing friction. He says the story in a very strange way, but
I'm gonna read
it's really quite. I've read it so many times.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And it's needed right now, for sure.
Continuous flow, theory of constraints. Yeah.
There you go, right? So, okay, last question. Finish this sentence. Prompting potential means.
For me, it's inspiring individuals.
Being able to think freely, removing constraints and really being able to open your mind.
Awesome. Well, Pearl, Simon, thank you so much for being on Prompting Potential.
Thank you.
And sharing your journey with us and the way that you lead. It's very inspirational. I know people can find you through social media, through LinkedIn or whatnot, and obviously follow you as you continue to speak and maybe do other podcasts as well. So again, thank you for being on the show and really appreciate it.
Thank you, Roger.
Thank you.
Wow, that was really great to hear how Pearl and Simon are thinking about how SLB continues to evolve and lead in complex environments. And what stands out from today is that sustained innovation in energy isn't just about breakthrough technology. It's about aligning people, culture, and digital capability to deliver performance at scale. And at SLB, progress happens when expertise, thoughtful AI adoption, and empowered teams come together to turn complexity into impact. And so for everyone listening, stay curious, stay adaptable, and keep prompting your potential. And remember, you can find us at any time at hi.ai.